Okay, so I am live in my friend Rob Fox's early childhood group, the Active Childhood UK. My name is Heather Hansen. I operate in early childhood program in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. And I've known Rob from online for some time, and think the world of his dedication and his passion. And one time we got to meet when he happened to be in Halifax with his family on vacation, and I took him around and we saw some sights together and got to actually have discussions in person. So he asked me if I would read a story on here, and I decided, sure, why not? Because I'm doing all kinds of storybooks live for other groups on Facebook in Canada. So I'm doing it very differently. I'm not used to, he just taught me some features. He sent me a link, and he taught me some neat features that I was unaware of. So he is much more young than I am. So, you can teach an old dog new tricks. So I am very involved in early childhood here in Nova Scotia, and I'm also a presenter that has presented on topics throughout North America. So anyway, the story I want to read, I have so many favorites, but this was always a huge hit with both the preschoolers and the school-age children I worked with. So it's called The True Story of the Little Pigs, the Three Little Pigs. And as opposed to saying that it's been written by someone, it says that it's told to John, and I'm terribly scared that I'm going to decimate the man's poor last name, John Skiska, illustrated by Lane Smith. So it's told to him as opposed to written by him, and you'll find out why. So everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story, because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. It's interesting that I didn't even think about it when I chose this story, that I have a giant painting of a pig behind me. That literally played no part in this decision. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think that you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The true story, the real story, is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Goes against all that I know of to bend back the spine of a book. But I'm doing this for your benefit and enjoyment. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold, and I ran out of sugar. So there you can see that he's baking. What a loving grandson, making a cake for his grandmother. I'm just looking at the bowl. I'm looking at some of the ingredients that are in the bowl, and I'm feeling just a tiny bit concerned with something in the bowl. But anyway, it's his recipe. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a house out of straw? So he's just casually strolling down the road, whistling. It looks like he's whistling, tossing the measuring cup as he's going. That requires skill. And then there down the road, you can see the house out of straw. Bending the spine again. So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called, little pig, are you in? No answer. I was just about to go home without the cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. And that's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed and I snuffed. And I sneezed a great sneeze. Achoo! And do you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of the straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the entire time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Just think of it as a big cheeseburger lying there. Now you can understand why my school-agers loved this story so much. Some of the preschoolers too, but my school-agers very much so. I definitely would not read it to toddlers. I was feeling a little bit better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar. So I went to the next neighbor's house. This neighbor was the first little pig's brother. He was a little smarter, but not much. He had built his house out of sticks. I rang the bell on the stick house, and nobody answered. And I called out, Mr. Pig, are you in? And he yelled back, Go away, Wolf. You can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin. I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. Achoo! And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down, just like his brother's. When the dust cleared, there was a second little pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honor. I sincerely hope Rob isn't upset with my story selection. Perhaps it seems just a tad morbid, sort of like maybe a good storybook to read for CSI. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out there in the open. So I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and the second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family because he had built his house out of bricks. So I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called out, Mr. Pig! Mr. Pig! Are you in? And do you know what that rude little porker answered? Get out of here, Wolf. Don't bother me again. Now I'm having concern about whether or not this is a timely book, because it seems very judgmental and somewhat shameful. And it was such a popular book for so long. I have been in the field for 30 years. I'll get an ulcer worrying about this, Rob. Thank you so much. But I believe in continuing with things once I've started them, so there you go. Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar. And he wouldn't even give me one little cup for my dear sweet old granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on, and I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed once again. Achoo! And then the third little pig yelled, "And your old granny can sit on a pin!" Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when someone talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course, I was trying to break the little pig's door down, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making quite a scene. The rest, as they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar did not seem very exciting, so they jazzed up the story with all of the huff and puff and blow your house down, and they made me the big bad wolf. That's it. That's the real story. I was framed. But maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar. And so that, oh goodness. I'm so used to doing this on my laptop. I'm not with the iPad. So anyway, that's the story. Stephanie and I were having a chat the other day. Why am I looking up at the ceiling when I'm just looking at my iPad? I don't know why I'm looking at the ceiling. So Steph and I were having a chat the other day about how whether or not stories hold up, Steph and Amy and I, about whether or not stories hold up to the test of time. So for example, the classic Tiki Tiki Tembo. There's elements of that book that perhaps you might not want to read it today. And we were even talking about a song that I have sung with preschoolers for years that they loved, that now really delivers a message to children that might not be appropriate in this day and age. So I hope that some people enjoyed the story. I sincerely hope I didn't offend anybody. And it has always been one of my favorite stories to read to older children. So I wish you all a good afternoon. I hope that you're all staying safe in your part of the world. And thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you to Rob for inviting me. I hope he does not regret it.